All right, so recently Tony Hawk and Jason Ellis were on Bert Kreischer's cooking show, and these were great guests because they were not afraid to call Bert out on some of the delusional stuff he was saying. Of course, he started talking about how athletic he is and how he's in the best shape, and he claims he could do 50 push-ups in a row and he could bench 275. And also, I guess he's been telling people he's a professional wakeboarder. Like Tony and Jason said one time, he spent an hour trying to convince them that he was really good at wakeboarding. And I guess he decided to call his friends so they could back him up and confirm that he's actually good at it. But they just denied it. They're like, no, he is not good at wakeboarding. What the hell is he talking about? And it's funny, he's trying to tell this to two actual athletes. He's trying to convince the greatest skateboarder of all time that he's the greatest wakeboarder of all time. I mean, this is ridiculous. And that's probably why they call him out on it, because these two actually know what they're talking about and they would understand how difficult it is to actually get good at something like that. But of course, Bert, at 50 years old with a giant beer belly, probably thinks he just hop on there and start flying through the air and doing 360s and shit. I mean, this guy's confidence is through the roof, but I actually have to give him some credit here because he actually has wakeboarded before during a TV show on the Travel Channel, so he has at least done it once. I don't know if that was the only time he did it, but it was a while ago too, so who the hell knows if he could do it anymore. But at least he can get up there. If he even stood up on the thing, I'd be impressed. And honestly, I'd be impressed if he was able to do any of the stuff he claims he's able to do. If he was able to do 50 push-ups in a row, I would be shocked. And I mean actual push-ups. When he says he could do push-ups, he really means he could just bounce his stomach off the floor 50 times. Like during the podcast, he admits that's what he means. And he tried this during Joe's podcast one time. They're seeing how many push-ups everybody could do, and Joe called him out on it. But first he waited for Bert to do like 30 of them, and then once he finished, he's like, all right, none of those count.
31, 32, 33. Oh. By the way, none of those count. Oh. None of those are legit. Not a single one. Not a single one was legitimate.
Oh, come on.
All of them were half push-ups.
No, I was happy.
Oh, fuck you guys.
No, I was happy for you. I was counting. I was
none of them
on, man.
Let me see him.
None of them were legit.
You barely doubled me.
And well, no, I just stopped because I'm not going to do those aren't real push-up game.
I don't think they were real.
And it's funny seeing Joe's reaction compared to Tom's, because Joe is not afraid to call Bert out whenever Bert's talking about how athletic he is or what kind of shape he's in. But Tom, on the other hand, he always seems to go along with whatever Bert's saying. Like the other day when Bert was saying he's in the best shape and he's only put on pure muscle this past year, Tom didn't question it at all, and it seemed like he agreed with him. But if it was Joe would have called him out instantly, which I think is a good thing and you need to do once in a while, because you need to bring this man back down to reality, because if he just keeps getting away with saying this stuff, he's just going to keep sounding more and more delusional, and he's going to think he can do crazier and crazier things, and he could hurt himself. I mean, if he tries to do something he's clearly not capable of, at his age, it's probably not going to end well. So he should thank Tony and Jason for calling him out here, even though he just thinks it's funny. He's probably not actually listening to them.
It got
me. Do you think you look jacked right now?
I am jacked. I am low-key jacked.
You're low-key?
Feel my arm. Just feel my arm. Just feel my arm.
Why is it shaking?
Because that's what flexors do. What? Just feel it. I am jacked. You know I'm jacked. You know I'm jacked. I could bang out 50 push-ups, easy peasy. If I hadn't maxed
50
out.
straight.
If I hadn't
50
maxed
straight.
out. I've done it.
You
Who
can't
saw me do it?
See, you just exaggerate stuff.
Bullshit!
50 straight.
Who saw me do 50 push-ups the other day?
Deja vu. Remember he was talking about what we were having wakeboard.
Sean Murray hit me up.
No, you travel the world telling people about what an action sports athlete you are. I get it from people. Oh, you don't know about Bert? He's a professional wakeboarder. I'm like, no, he's not. Oh, he's a he's a professional skimboarder. I'm like, dude. Worst idea ever.
Dude, I'm like sneaky athletic.
Do you remember when he was talking about, he was making claims about wakeboarding and then called your friend?
Yeah, and everybody said you
couldn't
couldn't
wakeboard. Back
wakeboard.
Before you left.
You called 3 people and they said you couldn't wakeboard after you argued for an hour that you were a great wakeboarder.
And I'm not saying you can't do this stuff, but
that's all we have.
That was our experience.
This is all, our machine experience is that all your friends say that you're lying.
Well, I'll tell you what I can do. I can make awesome meals. What a transition.
Nice transition.
So that was awesome, and maybe it's a good thing that Bert keeps getting more delusional, because it is hilarious watching this. And I think that might be Tom's logic. Like at one point, Bert brings up what Tom thinks of all this, and he said one time Tom was talking to him, he's like, dude, I know you bullshit around, you're a comedian, that's part of your job. And then Tom's like, I don't actually believe any of that. And then it seemed like Bert was shocked, and he's like, wait, really? You don't believe this stuff I'm saying? He's like, no, dude, you're a comedian, not a professional athlete. And Bert's like, yeah, sometimes I have to be reminded about that stuff. So it sounds like Tom does call him out on this once in a while, like when he absolutely has to. But Bert, he gets into this because he's talking about some of his critics, and he says he watched a video where somebody's talking about him, and it might have been one of my videos or somebody else who covered this topic, but it was when he was on Joe's podcast, and he told Joe he could do a split, and immediately Joe called him out on it. And Bert's defense here is hilarious. He's like, I'm a comedian. I'm not a historian or a professor.
Say silly shit because they're on the internet.
They just, like, yeah.
Like, what do you do that's bad?
I'm an alcoholic, fucking.
Yeah, but you're always there. You work hard. You don't disappear.
Yeah, I know, but then I don't know. I mean, there's a
Do you
lot.
get moody?
Like I saw one guy got really upset because I was telling Rogan, I was just talking shit to Rogan.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I can do that. And then he's like, you can do a
It
split.
doesn't sound like you, Bert.
But I'm a fucking comedian. That's the fucking, I'm not a fucking, I'm not a historian. I'm not a professor. I'm a fucking comedian. You know, Segura one time had to remind me of that. He's like, that's what I love about you. You just always talk shit. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, I don't believe it. And I go, you don't? And he goes, hey, buddy, you're a fucking comedian. You're not a pro athlete. And I was like, yeah, because sometimes it gets blurred in my mind.
Yeah, see that.
All right, dough's been made. I'm going to let it rise. Put it in a warm place. Sometimes it does get lost in my mind. Because if you do something, like if you surprise yourself athletically, like I went out to my high school, and we were taking batting practice with the high school kids, and I hit a home run. I'm 50 years old. I hit a
Is that
home
hard
run.
to do?
It's extremely hard to do, and I never did it in high school.
Pitching.
What?
Depends on who's pitching.
Yeah, well, it was
Right,
it was
that's what I'm
batting
saying.
practice. It was batting practice. Let me be real clear. But I hit a home run. I'd never done that in high school. When I was in shape, I never did that in high school.
So at least he can admit that sometimes he does think he's a professional athlete and he gets carried away with it. But it's weird because, you know, he's saying this stuff seriously, but then he's acting like, hey, I'm doing it because I'm a comedian, which I guess it is funny, but also he is being serious about it. Like, he actually thinks he can do 50 push-ups, he can bench press 275. Like, also during this podcast, I forgot to play this earlier, but Jason asked him if he could bench press 200, and he's like, oh, dude, I can do 275. And then there's silence for a second, and you could see Tony's just staring at Jason, probably waiting for him to call Bert out. But then Bert immediately goes to talking about how he can do 50 push-ups.
You can bench 200?
I can bench 275. I can actually do 50 push-ups in a row. I can actually do 50. I did 50.
Are these like quick little jerky ones, or
Like, no, I just want, you'll see my power. You'll see my
Does your
power.
stomach hit the ground every time?
Yeah, no, that's the
So you
cheat code.
bounce them back off.
That's the cheat code. It's like, Rogan goes, it's not fair. That's not a real push-up.
It
And I go,
isn't.
I can't go all the way down. It stops me.
So you can kind of get it to like flick your back up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And it's just so weird how much Bert likes to brag about this stuff. Like, I don't hear anybody talk about this as much as him. But I think he's trying to convince himself that he's in good shape. Like, him hitting a home run, he probably thinks, like, I couldn't do that in high school, and now that I can do it, that probably means that I'm in better shape than I was in high school. And then also, I think he tries to justify some of the outrageous stuff he says, like claiming he could do a split. I think he tries to justify that by saying he's a comedian, he's just joking around. But he's definitely being serious. I mean, he'll even say that. He'll say, I'm being serious, I'm not joking around here. I think I can actually do it. I mean, he admitted it earlier. Sometimes he just thinks he's an actual athlete, and somebody has to bring him back down to reality. And Brian Callen, he does the same kind of thing. Brian's always talking about how good his fighting skills are and how he's the toughest person ever. But then whenever these two do this kind of thing in front of Joe, he just shuts it down right away and he'll call him out for it. And I was glad to see Jason and Tony do the same kind of thing here with Bert. I think it's when Bert brings this stuff up in front of actual athletes that actually understand how difficult some of the stuff is, and they're not just going to feed into Bert's delusions, so they call him out on it. But let me know what you guys think about it all down in the comments. And then make sure you go check out my Patreon account. There's a ton of content up there. I post every week, and there's probably over 35 exclusive videos on there. I made one about Kramer, Michael Richards' infamous meltdown at the Laugh Factory, and also the basketball game between Shane and Matt and Legion of Skanks that resulted in a ton of drama and almost destroyed their friendship. And then also I have one about the degeneracy of Ari Shaffir and the downfall of Milo Yiannopoulos. So if you're interested in any of that, make sure you check it out. I'll put a link in the description, and then make sure you hit the like button, then hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you at the next video.
I've always been like, why aren't all my friends either gay or bisexual?